Hi, Charisma here at Restaurant 13, and I ran into the beautiful Terri Matthews. So we're gonna sit and chat. How are you?
I'm good.
When I think of Terri Matthews, I think of Jaden's voice. But for those who don't know about Jaden's voice and all the wonderful work that you're doing, can you talk about Jaden's voice and how you got started?
Absolutely. So Jaden is my 7-year-old son who was diagnosed when he was about 3 with autism. And I could keep you on this microphone all day, so I'm going to give you what I would consider the short version. Jaden, once he was diagnosed, in my own personal journey, I recognized there were a lot of services that we can afford to get for Jaden. Additional doctor's appointments, therapies such as speech, behavior, occupational, alternative therapies with music and art, and he's even rode horses as part of his therapy. And in that journey, I recognized that not all families and children had the same opportunity. And God, in his miraculous way of doing things, he said, okay, hold up, in Terri terms. You know, we need to look into this a little bit deeper. So that kind of gave birth to Jaden's voice once we recognized that not all families had the same opportunities to receive care. So that's where Jaden's voice started.
Now, I was doing some research because I wanted to be prepared for you, and I heard that 1 in 150 people are diagnosed with autism. Do you think that now we're at a point where diagnosing autism is easier? Because I know it's been, you know, a bit of a challenge up to now.
That's actually a good question, and uniquely enough, the stats now are, it's actually 1 in 88, 1 in 54.
Wow.
Yeah, 1 in 54 are boys, because boys are more, are usually diagnosed more than girls. And 10 years ago, it was 1 in 10,000.
Wow.
So it's interesting. Autism is known as a spectrum disorder, and there are a couple of things that fall under that spectrum disorder. And I would say, to answer your question, I think we are diagnosing better than what we have before, but unfortunately, I also believe that we're on the rise for a reason. I think autism is caused by a variety of things, so I don't want to sit here and say it's just for shots or genetically. It could be, I think it's a lot of everything, you know what I mean? And I think we don't know exactly, which is why we're spending so much time trying to find out with research, hence the puzzle piece. It's a puzzle right now.
Because we're still trying to figure it out.
Absolutely. And you know what's unique about autism that I have learned in my journey, it's the fastest development disability in the United States, period. It has an annual growth rate of 10 to 17%. That's better than investment. I mean, I hate to make fun of the situation, but sometimes you have to find the humor in it. And it's like, wow, really? And it's unique to me that boys are typically diagnosed more than girls, so I'm not really sure where that's coming from. But ultimately, in the end, one thing, regardless of all the statistics, no family, based upon their ethnicity, their socioeconomic status, who they rub elbows with, should go without service. I know personally that providing these children, by diagnosing them early on and providing them the best services possible, help them reach their fullest potential. And Jaden's a great example of that.
So I know for a lot of people this may be a stigma. I feel like not enough people are having conversations about, you know, the reality of being a person that's a member of a family that's dealing with someone that has autism. So can you kind of walk us through a day in the life of being Jaden's mom?
Oh my gosh. Want to see it? that's a day in the life of being.
He keeps you on your toes.
Okay. Exhausted, and it's only like 12 o'clock. Actually, a day in the life of Jaden is very interesting. It's transitioned because Jaden is now in school full time. He's a first grader, a healthy first grader. He keeps them young ladies on their toes.
He's a cutie pie.
Initially, it was a challenge when Jaden was in daycare. He had went from having the ability to speak to no language at all. So having no language, he had some pretty horrible behavioral problems in the lightest way to put it. And you know, when you're a busy mom, a corporate mom, you have 2 other children, and you're hosting meetings, and you're on and off planes, and you own businesses. It was like Jaden is out of control, and we don't know how to control him.
Right.
So that world was a little bit different. We had to give Jaden all of the right tools. He needed additional speech therapy, more than what Medicaid services could provide. So instead of 1 speech therapy a week, he needed 4 speech therapies a week. He needed behavioral therapists on site. He needed one-on-one care, individuals to follow him to daycare. They're known in Pennsylvania as TSS, and unfortunately there's a lot of things and issues tied to that, but TSS have a high turnover. So one of the challenges with autistic kids is that they don't like change. So imagine you have a consistent with somebody that you can't even control because you don't pay those individuals. Those are services paid through the state. So initially, it was a bit of a challenge. Once we got all of the services that Jaden needed, he was able to communicate, his behavior improved, and he was able to go to daycares and eventually school and do very similar things to other kids do. So waking up with Jaden is quite interesting, because I usually get bopped in the head and my cell phone is looked for so he can play Angry Birds. And then we have to convince
Jaden and I have luck.
I'm so glad he hasn't learned Candy Crush, because that was
it's addicting.
I'm hearing between Angry Birds and Mario Kart, it's been an interesting day. So we put the phones down, we brush our teeth, we get prepared. We definitely say a lot of prayers and thank God for where we've been and where we're going, and then it's all about school time. So I heard he's king of the classroom.
I can imagine. Like I said, he's a cute guy, so I know in a few years. Now, a lot of times when we think about autism, it can be a touchy subject for people, and sometimes people don't always feel comfortable sharing, and there's this stigma that I don't think should be there at all, because we're all going through life and have these experiences that can help one another. So would you mind telling us kind of your journey and how you found out that Jaden was autistic?
Wow. That was an amazing, challenging, twisted, emotional time for me. When Jaden was about 3 years old, he had fallen. And actually, he was a little bit younger than that. I would venture to say he was about 21 months. And it was a huge gash in his hand. And I'm thinking, shouldn't he be crying or something? Like, for a gash to be that big, I was crying for him, and it wasn't even my hand. And so I contacted the pediatrician, and I said, Jaden has this huge gash in his hand. It might actually need stitches. I want to bring him in and get him checked out. So I went and saw his pediatrician, and she took a look at Jaden, and she said, Jaden, and he was playing on this toy train table, and I sat there. It was probably all of 1 minute, but it honestly felt like the longest time period of my life, because I recognized that he wasn't answering his name. And we had several conversations prior to that, where Jaden had come in for his 15th or 12th-month checkup. He was doing normal things. He was a little bit behind, but he's a boy. They say boys typically develop a little bit later than girls. I don't want to get into the reasons why, but in my case for Jaden, I believe he has regressive autism. I do personally believe that for Jaden that it had a lot to do with the shots, or coincidentally it happened because after his shot he had 106-degree fever for about 3 days, and then it was like he had died. He had died, but he was still there. Just not the same little boy that I had known. And that was a challenge for me because I didn't know what that meant. And I'm a fixer, I'm a business person, I'm used to forecasting, I'm used to fixing issues and problems for everybody, and this was something I felt like I couldn't fix. So he goes to the doctor, she's calling his name, she said he's still not responding. And I said, no, he's just changed ever since that day. And she said, oh, we need to get him into speech therapy. And so at the time we connected with a group called Mental Health Mental Retardation. That in itself is a challenge. As a parent, you have to call mental health mental retardation. Like, what does that mean? And so since then, thanks Dennis O'Brien and the rest of the team who's worked so aggressively at changing that, it's now called Office of Development Disability. But once they came out to my home, we went through a process. They were there for about 2 hours, and they said Jaden has red flags. And red flags meant there were things that indicated that he was somewhere on the autism spectrum, and what that meant no one knew. So we had to take Jaden to the doctor, and the doctor's office, which took 8 months to get into, by the way. No, 8 months to get into. In that process, we were able to identify and get his official diagnosis that he was autistic. So that's where my whole life changed. And at one point in time, honestly, it broke me down. I was hurt, confused. I wasn't, oh my gosh, hard. Oh, absolutely. And I wanted to fix it. And nothing I did gave financially, the level of energy, effort, who I knew, how much money I had, none of it mattered. All I knew was that early intervention was going to be the best service.
It was such an absolute pleasure interviewing Terri Matthews of Jaden's Voice. Please go to the website to check out more that they're doing. They're really forging ahead, doing wonderful things to help the autistic community, and they need your support. So be sure to visit their website, www.jadensvoice.org, to hear more.